Welcome back to Talk Your Abs Off. I'm your host, Abby Clapper, and surprise, you might be wondering why I'm showing up in your feed when I'm only usually here once a month. However, super exciting news. I am starting to drop 2 episodes a month for you. It'll be every 2 weeks. The first episode of the month, I will have a guest, and the second episode of the month will just be myself, and I, sharing something that I am passionate about in the health and wellness space that I just want to talk about with you. And today we are going to be talking about sobriety and sober curious. It seems to be something that is quote unquote trending right now. And I want to talk about if it is more than a trend or if this is something that's just going to be temporary, like a fad, and then go away. This topic is really important to me because I actually live a sober lifestyle. This is recent. When this podcast episode comes out, it will actually be my 1 year sober anniversary, which is crazy to think about. I am so very proud and grateful for this past year and everyone who supported me on this journey. And I thought it would be a really great opportunity to talk about it, to talk about my own story and to talk about benefits, why people choose to be sober or are sober curious. Quick disclaimer, I am not here to tell you to stop drinking. That is not what this episode is about. I want to dive into why more people are choosing sobriety and also just share what I've learned. And if it can help someone, that's all I could ask for. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. If you have not already, please follow, subscribe, share the show, and maybe even leave a 5-star review if you like this podcast. It really helps me as a small business owner and helps the show as well. So I want to share a little bit about my story first. I didn't start drinking until I was in college. And when I got to college, the university that I went to was very much like a party school. And I was 100% in that. I partied all through college. I drank a lot. I drank in excess. And then once I graduated from college and moved to Florida, where I live now, was still drinking, not as much, but was still kind of living that drinking party lifestyle. And there came a point when I just was not making safe decisions for myself, for those around me, and just decided that something needed to change. So what I started doing first was I tried to do the sober curious lifestyle. So sober curious, if you're unsure what sober curious is it's kind of a middle ground between sobriety and still, drinking. And it's a lifestyle choice where individuals explore their relationship with alcohol by reducing or abstaining from its consumption completely. It's not about giving up alcohol completely, but rather questioning and experimenting with different drinking patterns. And that's definitely one way that it's January. Some people might be trying to do dry January, which totally all for that, especially if it helps you to have a healthier relationship with alcohol. And also with all of the newness of the sober movement, there are a lot of mocktail options when you go out. So that's something that's huge for me is when I go out, I don't want to feel left out. I don't want to feel like I'm being looked at differently. And that's just a me thing. And that's just an insecurity that I have. So I just like to hold something. So the mocktails for me have been a huge game changer. And I'm getting better about it now where I can just order a water or, there's non-alcoholic beers and, all of those things, especially if you're just sober curious. I a lot of times will recommend to, people who I have the conversations with, if they're looking to cut back, I'll say, hey, try having one NA beer, a non-alcoholic beer, and then have a regular beer. And that's just, one way where you're having a little bit less than you normally would, but, it's nothing too crazy. So something that really impacted me into choosing to live a sober lifestyle is the book Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. If you've seen any of my social media, I've posted about her, especially when I was really making this decision. So I actually tried to be sober curious and realized once I read this book, there's a couple different ways that she defines, not having a great relationship with alcohol. If you're drinking every day, that's one kind of way to see that you're not necessarily having the best relationship with alcohol. And also when you do drink, even if it's not frequent, if you're binge drinking, blacking out, things like that, that's another way to show that you're not necessarily having the best relationship with alcohol. And that was the camp that I was in. So I wasn't drinking every day, but when I went out, like I said, I was drinking enough where I wasn't making the best decisions, and it just wasn't safe. So the book Quit Like a Woman, there was one day I came home, or I woke guys, let's say I woke up at home. I had Ubered home because I couldn't find my car, and I woke up that morning and decided that something needed to change. So Ubered back to where I had been the previous night, found my car, but came home and really just I went on Amazon, looked up, so books about sobriety, sober books for women, things like that, and found Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. And I'll make sure to put a link for that book in the show notes because I tell everybody about this book because it really changed my perspective with alcohol. It really helped me to define my poor relationship with alcohol. And when I was in college, that was something that everyone around me had the same relationship with alcohol, or a lot of people around me had the same relationship with alcohol. And so I didn't think anything of it. And where I live in Florida also, there's just a lot of people who party. And I think just society in general is looking at, when there's nothing to do, oh, let's go out, let's go drink. So something that her book did was also provided tips on how to build a new routine without alcohol, because that's honestly a really big part of it. So one of the things that I really took away from that was, and it was something, I wasn't drinking every day, but for someone who is, or even someone who's not drinking every day, she would start her day with a hot cup of lemon water, which I already like. I like tea. And so I thought that that was a great way to just start the day a healthy way. And that's, what I'm all about here. So I started doing that. I thought that it was fantastic. It was just warm and soothing and just a really good way to kick off the day. Or it's been a challenging year, but one of the things that I have found is when sometimes you get a craving for alcohol. Like, let's say you have a really bad day and you want to reach for a glass of wine, and it's finding alternatives that when you're craving that, you immediately have this replacement in your brain that you can just reach for. So for me, that is it's Spindrift, which is a type of sparkling water. It's a flavored sparkling water, so I love that. And I'll add in some cranberry juice. I'll put it sometimes, at first I was putting it in a wine glass because I wanted it to feel like I wasn't missing something. And now I just put it in a regular cup and it's healthier and I feel better. I don't have a headache, nothing like that. So finding things within your routine that are easy for you to change, easy for you to replicate and find an alternative instead of reaching for alcohol, whether it's an activity, whether it's a drink, whether it's food, just something that you can kind of alternate with. Another huge thing that I took away from her book, and I thought this was fascinating. So we all know about big tobacco, right? We know how tobacco companies have advertised to us for so long, and how even, back when I was younger, back in, the early 2000s, we knew that tobacco wasn't good for us, but we still saw so many commercials promoting it. So big tobacco, what we saw happen with them is they really pushed it in the media, in just the society, was like, hey, smoking is okay. Smoking is going to make you feel better, cooler, whatever the thing was. Big tobacco really framed it in a way that made you think, like that's something that I could get behind. Like that's something that I could do. And it's actually, we know that we've heard that tobacco's not good for you, but hey, let's, I'll try it anyways. And then you're hooked. And that's exactly what they want. And something that she talked about in this book was big alcohol, that alcohol companies do something very similar, which blew my mind when I was reading it. Because when you think about the books that you read, the movies that you watch on TV, the shows that you watch, things that you listen to, the frequency in which someone is making a cocktail, making a drink, or grabbing a glass of wine at the end of the day, or you hear just in common language, oh, I've had such a long day with the kids. Mom wants to grab, her glass of wine. And these are all things that over time have been just ingrained in us. Like, oh, if we have a really hard day, we have to grab a drink because it's going to relax us. It's going to make us feel better. But that's not necessarily the case, because alcohol actually is going to make you feel worse. And if we want to go into the health, not benefits of alcohol, Things like messing with your sleep. You don't get a good night's sleep. Your body doesn't go into its full REM cycles. So sleep is necessary for recovery. So if you're an active person who's exercising, your body is not recovering to its full potential if you're not getting the correct amount of sleep and the correct type of sleep, which alcohol is going to make a difference in that. It's also dehydrating. It can also cause the hangovers, the headaches, the nausea, all of those things, and make you less motivated the next morning to do whatever you had planned to do. So I like to think of it like big alcohol, and I'm a person who doesn't want to be manipulated by the media. And so when I took a second to think about all the places where I have seen alcohol used and it made it seem like it's just commonplace, it really makes you think like, what if, I could change that thought pattern and grab even just a cup of water or something that would be good for your body instead of, oh, I had such a hard day, I'm going to grab a glass of wine or a cocktail. I have learned so much through this past year of my sobriety, and I have 5 lessons that I would like to share with you. The first lesson is that my friendships didn't need to change. I feel very blessed to have the friends that I have now in my 30s who I met in my late 20s who accept me for who I am. They accepted me when I drank, and they accept me now that I don't. There's no pressure to drink. And shout out to one of my best friends who, when we go out for brunch or if we go out for, lunch or dinner or anything, she is ordering an NA, a non-alcoholic beer, or mocktails with me when we go out to eat. And let me say, depending on what your friendships and what your relationships look like, some of your friendships may need to change if you decide to live a sober lifestyle, or if you're sober curious and your friends aren't supportive of that. And that's okay, because there are going to be so many other people around you who are willing to step in and support you. So it might seem really scary if you're looking to become sober or just drinking less. You might think, oh, but my friends, they all party, they all drink. If you change what you do and your friends don't support that, then it might be time to look for some new friends. I know that that's might seem kind of harsh, but if it's something that you believe in your core that you need to do for yourself, then surround yourself with people who are going to support you. Another lesson that I learned is to redefine what fun looked like. I learned that, crazy enough, there are a lot of other activities that you can do besides going out, quote unquote, going out. You can still go out for a meal or mocktails, but my friends will meet up with me. We'll go for walks. So doing healthy things, right? Going for walks, exploring different parts of the city that we haven't been in before, going to the beach and just relaxing or bringing a book. And those things can be just as fun. All right, third lesson, we're digging more into the health benefits. And I also want to talk about anxiety, because that was something that was huge for me and in my decision to change, honestly. And as someone with generalized anxiety disorder, I grew up with it, I've had it my whole life. The anxiety or anxiety with a hangover the morning after a night of drinking and not knowing how you acted or what happened, what you said, all of that went away once I stopped drinking, because then you're clear-minded, you're cognizant of everything that's going on. And that can be challenging for some people. Sometimes all we want to do is just escape. And once you remove that action and are kind of forced to just be with your thoughts and emotions, like, it can be really hard. Over the past year, I've gotten off of my anxiety medication, which was a big win, but also a big challenge. And honestly, I don't think it would have been possible if I continued to drink alcohol, because now I get to wake up every morning knowing exactly what I said, what I did, and that I wasn't sabotaging myself in the situations that I was in. Lesson 4, deflecting or comparison minimization, was something I kind of had to come to terms with. So sometimes I'll tell people that I'm sober. It'll come up in a conversation. Oh, why aren't you drinking? Oh, I'm sober. And then we'll talk about it a little bit, because I'm very open about my journey and what I'm doing now. And some people may use your story or reason for quitting drinking as an opportunity to try and convince you, who may not necessarily care about the other person's story, or trying to convince themselves that they don't have a problem. I've had to work through not letting that make me feel bad about my past and have realized that it's just something that that person may need to address with themselves in the future. But on the vast other hand, becoming sober has opened up so many conversations with friends, clients, family members, people who take my group exercise classes to the discussion of sobriety. And honestly, it makes me kind of emotional because the more that I start talking about it with people, the more that I found there were other people who were on their own sober journeys as well, or who just wanted to talk about, hey, I don't love where I'm at with, my relationship with alcohol right now. And tell me more about what you did. And the fifth tip, and this kind of is going to go along with it, is that it takes a lot of emotional work to make the decision not to drink, especially when we go back to, the big alcohol conversation of, okay, man, when you see that someone's had a bad day and they reach for a glass of wine, why are you reaching for that glass of wine? If you had a bad day, now that I'm sober, I now need to kind of reflect on the day and say, okay, what made this day bad? And what can I do for myself to make the day better or make this situation better in the future? And finding, again, that would be an opportunity where I would reach for, my sparkling flavored water, which might sound silly, but that's something that I really enjoy in order to just have an alternative and then can just work through whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm thinking. I'm back in therapy now, and that is also a huge part of it. The Quit Like a Woman book, she did talk about how AA or Alcoholics Anonymous, which she talked about in the book, wasn't necessarily made for every single situation. It worked for a group of people, and maybe that's part of your story is that Alcoholics Anonymous worked for you. It hasn't worked for you, or if you're hesitant about it, you may be able to find a path that works better for you. And honestly, that's where this should just be an advertisement for this book, honestly, which it's not. But this book truly changed the way that I think. And it helped me realize that even if you have a bad relationship with alcohol, that you can still find your own way through these things. And therapy being one of them, having someone to talk to about this and to work through your emotions so that at the end of the day, you're not reaching for another drink. So if you are considering, or if you have been considering maybe drinking less, maybe looking into sobriety, I have a few tips for you. And, I've only been doing this for 1 year, so I'm fairly new to it, but I have seen other people do it for longer periods of time, and it's so inspiring. And I know that it's possible, and I know that I'll be able to continue, and I know that if you give it a try, even if you're sober curious and just want to lessen your alcohol, it's actually something interesting that I've been seeing is that the newer generation, I believe it's Generation Z, is drinking less, is maybe being sober, but is definitely drinking less. And I thought that that was very interesting, and I did a little bit of research on it and found that part of the reason why is because they're not necessarily as into like social gatherings. And I had read a book many years ago because I was really intrigued by Gen Z and I wanted to know why why they were the way that they were. And when I was reading that book and I was kind of learning about that generation, they were more inclined to stay home. They had more virtual connections, virtual relationships with their friends. And so part of that then leads into people aren't going out with their friends as much. So they're drinking less that way. Or they're starting to realize, okay, these health risks are too risky. And I don't want to smoke. I don't want to smoke weed. I don't want to drink alcohol. And they're just being safer. So there are a lot of other reasons that I've seen in some of the articles that I read. But I thought that was very interesting. So if you are looking to kind of start experimenting and exploring sobriety, start small. Don't try to go into it cold turkey unless you think that you're in a place where it's necessary for you. And, it's January. So a lot of people right now are doing dry January. Feel out dry January, see what you think, and maybe see if it's something that you'd like to even continue. If you've already done, today's the 16th, if you're already, 2 weeks in and you're like, yeah, this actually isn't so bad, and you continue the next 2 weeks, January ends, You can continue past that. There's nothing wrong with that. And you have that decision to make. Finding community is another really important thing. So like I said, the more that I talk about it with people, the more I find other people who have become sober and who are living a sober lifestyle. There are also sober groups. So, AA is one of them. I found on Facebook a sober group, and it's just a bunch of people in the area that I live in Florida who don't drink and who are celebrating their own sober journeys. And they post, kava bars, so places that don't have alcohol or that have other options. They post events that they're doing. They're dry events, so there's no alcohol, but you're doing it with a group of people who are like-minded, who are going to keep you following the trail that you want to stay on. And also, just like I mentioned earlier in this episode, finding the friends who support you, finding those people in your life. And also being patient with yourself. It is a journey. I talk all the time about your health and wellness journey, your fitness journey, and how that is not a cookie cutter, one-size-all approach. Neither is your journey with alcohol and what that looks like for you. So be patient with yourself. It might not be perfect, and that's okay. I have heard stories from people who start and stop their journey until they just come to a place where they're just ready to fully make the change. So to kind of wrap this episode up, I just want to encourage you to reflect on your own relationship with alcohol. You're the only one who can make the decision. I just wanted to shed some light on it and share a little bit about my story. Even if it's just to learn a little bit more about yourself, just do a little self-exploration and see, what that might look like for you. I also would love to hear if you are sober curious, if you've been living your own sober journey. I would love to hear about it. Honestly, sometimes just talking to someone else who is going through the same thing, it is encouraging, it's empowering, and sharing your story can be so beneficial. You might not be comfortable sharing it with the people around you. You haven't told them yet because you're scared of what they might think. I would love to hear your story. I am going to drop my socials. They're all going to be in the show notes so that if you want to send me a message, I would love nothing more than for you to share how your journey is going. And even if you just need some encouragement or support, I am 100% here for that and here for you. So again, this episode is not telling you to stop drinking, but just to bring up the discussion of the benefits and what it might look like if you chose to drink less, and also what it might look like along the way. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Hey y'all, Abby here. If you're looking to stay consistent with your workouts and hit your fitness goals, I've got something just for you, a brand new free workout planner. This guide will help you plan your daily workouts, track your habits, and stay motivated every single day. It's simple, easy to use, and designed to keep you on track, whether you're hitting the gym, working out at home, or just getting started. Grab your free copy now by heading to endorphinwellness.com or clicking the link in the show notes. Let's get organized, stay consistent, and crush those 2025 goals together.